Wyoming Territory, 1878. The wind howled across the open prairie like a mournful spirit, carrying the scent of sage and dust across the barren landscape. Samuel Everett drew his coat tighter against the chill, scanning the horizon with eyes that had grown too accustomed to disappointment. At 25, he'd already convinced himself that the frontier was no place for anything beyond mere survival, that a man had to be hard as the rocky soil to endure. Love and family were luxuries that got men killed in a land where nature and outlaws showed no mercy. Sam adjusted his Winchester rifle across his saddle horn as his horse picked its way down the slope toward Sweetwater Creek. 3 years as a ranch hand at the Rocking M had earned him enough to stake his own claim, but the small cabin and modest herd he'd accumulated still felt hollow achievements in the vast emptiness of Wyoming. His mother had died when he was 16, his father following 2 years later, leaving him with the belief that attachments only led to pain. Better to rely on himself alone. The late October day was fading fast as Sam approached the creek crossing, his mind on the long ride back to his homestead. That's when he heard it, a soft whimpering carried on the wind. He reined in his horse, head cocked to one side, wondering if his ears were playing tricks. There it came again, unmistakably human. Sam dismounted, drawing his Colt revolver as he moved cautiously toward a cluster of cottonwood trees. The sound grew clearer, a baby's cry. He pushed through the underbrush and stopped short at the sight before him. A small wagon with one broken wheel sat abandoned, and beside it, a young woman huddled beneath a threadbare blanket, clutching a small bundle to her chest. "Ma'am," Sam called softly, holstering his pistol to appear less threatening. "You all right?" The woman's head jerked up, revealing a face that, despite being smudged with dirt and streaked with tears, struck Sam with its delicate beauty. She couldn't have been more than 20 years old, with wide blue eyes and honey-blonde hair escaping from beneath a simple bonnet. Her dress, once a cheerful blue calico, was travel-stained and torn at the hem. "Stay back," she warned, her voice hoarse but determined. "I've got a gun." The trembling hand that emerged from beneath the blanket held a small derringer that looked too heavy for her slender fingers. Sam raised his hands slowly. "I mean no harm, ma'am, just heard the little one crying and thought someone might need help." He gestured to the broken wagon. "Looks like you've had some trouble." The bundle in her arms squirmed and let out another cry. The young woman's resolve seemed to crumble, and she lowered the derringer, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "My husband," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He died 3 weeks ago. Fever took him fast. We were headed to his brother in Laramie, but the wheel broke yesterday, and her shoulders slumped. I don't know what to do anymore." Something shifted in Sam's chest, an uncomfortable feeling he'd long suppressed. He should ride on, point her toward the nearest settlement, and continue with his solitary life. Entanglements led to pain, he knew this truth bone deep, yet he found himself saying, "Night's coming fast and it'll be below freezing soon. Let me build you a fire at least." "I'm Beatrice Porter," she offered as he gathered wood, "and this is Emma." She adjusted the blanket to reveal a small face with rosebud lips and wispy blonde hair, no more than 3 months old. "Samuel Everett," he replied, striking a match to the kindling. "Most folks call me Sam." As flames licked upward into the darkening sky, Sam found himself studying Beatrice's face in the firelight. Her exhaustion was evident, but there was a stubborn resilience in the set of her jaw that commanded respect. The baby had quieted, nursing beneath a modest covering. "When did you last eat?" Sam asked, already reaching for his saddlebags. "Yesterday morning," Beatrice admitted. "I saved the last milk for Emma." Sam wordlessly passed her jerky and hardtack, then set coffee to boil in his small tin pot. As she ate, he examined the wagon, confirming his suspicion that the axle had cracked along with the wheel. "It can't be fixed here," he told her, returning to the fire. "Not without proper tools and a new wheel." Beatrice nodded, resignation in her eyes. "I figured as much. In the morning, perhaps you could point me toward the nearest town." The wind gusted suddenly, making the flames dance and sending a shower of sparks skyward. Emma whimpered and Beatrice tucked the blanket more securely around her. Sam looked at them, the young mother with her infant, alone in a merciless land, and knew he couldn't simply ride away come morning. It went against everything he'd taught himself about survival on the frontier, but he couldn't abandon them. "My place is about 4 miles north," he said, the words surprising him even as he spoke them. "It's not much, but there's a roof and walls. You and the little one can stay until we figure something better." Suspicion flashed in Beatrice's eyes. "Why would you help strangers?" Sam looked away, uncomfortable with her direct gaze. "Because my mother would have had my hide if I'd done anything less," he said finally. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all he was willing to offer. When morning came, Sam loaded Beatrice and Emma onto his horse while he salvaged what he could from the wagon: a small trunk, some cooking utensils, and a framed daguerreotype of Beatrice with a thin-faced young man who must have been her husband. She clutched Emma with one arm and the saddle horn with the other as Sam led the horse on foot, his rifle at the ready. By mid-morning, his small homestead came into view, a modest log cabin with a stone chimney, a corral for horses, and a small barn where he kept his meager cattle herd during the worst weather. It wasn't much compared to some spreads, but it was his, built with his own hands over the past year. "It's not fancy," Sam said, helping Beatrice down from the horse. "It's a palace compared to that broken-down wagon," she replied with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. Inside, the cabin consisted of a single room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, a narrow bed in one corner, and shelves holding supplies. Sam immediately set about building a fire while Beatrice stood awkwardly in the center of the room, Emma fussing against her shoulder. "You take the bed," Sam said, not looking at her as he stoked the flames. "I'll fix up something for myself in the barn." "I can't put you out of your home," Beatrice protested. "You're not, it's only temporary." Sam checked his coffee supplies. "Just until you're rested enough to continue to Laramie." That night, after ensuring Beatrice and Emma were settled, Sam made himself a pallet in the barn as promised. As he lay listening to the soft lowing of his small herd and the whistle of wind through the rafters, he wondered what madness had possessed him to invite a woman and child into his carefully constructed solitude. 3 days stretched into a week. Sam found himself rising earlier than usual, working harder around the homestead, and returning to find the cabin swept, his meager belongings organized, and something hot waiting in the cooking pot. Beatrice proved herself resourceful, washing clothes in the creek, and somehow making palatable meals from his basic provisions. Emma became a fixture in the cabin, her bright eyes following Sam's movements with innocent curiosity. At first, he kept his distance from the infant, uncomfortable with her fragility. But one evening, as Beatrice struggled to prepare supper with Emma crying insistently, Sam found himself reaching for the child. "May I?" he asked awkwardly. Beatrice hesitated only briefly before placing Emma in his arms. Sam held her stiffly at first, afraid his calloused hands might somehow damage her. But the baby quieted almost immediately, studying his face with solemn eyes before breaking into a toothless smile that caught Sam completely off guard. "She likes you," Beatrice said softly. Sam cleared his throat, "Just luck." But that night in the barn, he found himself remembering the weight of Emma in his arms, the absolute trust in her tiny face. It stirred something in him he'd thought long buried, a longing for connection he'd denied for years. The winter's first snow came early that year, dusting the prairie with white and bringing with it a biting cold that made the journey to Laramie increasingly impractical. Sam found himself secretly relieved when Beatrice broached the subject one evening as they sat before the fire. "I should find a way to reach Richard, my husband's brother," she said, her fingers nervously pleating her skirt. "But with the weather turning—" "It would be foolish to attempt it now," Sam finished for her. "Spring would be safer." Beatrice looked up, relief evident in her eyes. "Are you certain?" "We've imposed on your kindness already." Sam shrugged, affecting nonchalance though his heart hammered oddly. The cabin's warmer with more bodies in it, makes practical sense. As winter settled fully across the Wyoming plains, Sam found his solitary routine transformed. He rose before dawn, tended the animals, and hunted when weather permitted. But now he returned to lamplight in windows, to Emma's gurgling welcome, to Beatrice's quiet thank you when he brought in game or firewood. They developed an unspoken rhythm, Sam handling the outside work, Beatrice maintaining the cabin. In the evenings, they sat by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence. Sam learned that Beatrice had grown up in Illinois, the daughter of a schoolteacher. She'd married Thomas Porter at 18, following him west with dreams of prosperity that had withered against the harsh reality of frontier life. "I was so naive," she admitted one night as Emma slept in a makeshift cradle nearby. "I thought love would be enough." Sam poked at the fire, uncomfortable with the direction of their conversation. Love doesn't stop outlaws or blizzards or disease. No, Beatrice agreed softly, but perhaps it makes them bearable. Sam had no answer for that. Christmas approached, bringing with it memories Sam typically drowned in whiskey. This year, however, he found himself cutting fresh pine boughs to decorate the cabin and trading 2 hens to a passing peddler for peppermint sticks and a small wooden horse for Emma, who had recently discovered the joy of rolling from her back to her stomach. On Christmas Eve, after a supper of rabbit stew and the last of Beatrice's preserved apples, Sam presented his awkwardly wrapped gifts. Beatrice's eyes filled with tears as she accepted a new hair ribbon and a small book of poetry he'd found among his mother's belongings years ago. "I have something for you too," she said, retrieving a package from beneath her bed. Inside, Sam found a knitted scarf in deep blue wool. "I unraveled my old shawl," she explained. "I noticed yours was fraying." Sam ran his fingers over the even stitches, a strange tightness in his throat. "No one's given me a gift since my mother died," he admitted. Beatrice's hand found his across the table, warm and small against his weathered palm. "Thank you, Sam, for everything." He withdrew his hand first, unsettled by the warmth that spread through him at her touch. She was a widow still in mourning, and he was merely doing what any decent man would do. These reminders became his mantra as winter deepened and his awareness of Beatrice grew, the curve of her cheek in firelight, the melody of her humming to Emma, the brush of her skirts as she moved around the cabin. January brought a blizzard that howled for 3 days, confining them to the cabin. Sam made brief, dangerous trips to the barn to tend the animals, returning with frost coating his beard and eyebrows. During one such excursion, the wind shifted suddenly, obliterating visibility. Sam lost his bearing between barn and cabin, the cold seeping through his layers as he stumbled through knee-deep drifts. When the cabin finally materialized before him, Beatrice was standing in the doorway, a lamp held high, her face tight with fear. "I thought you were lost," she whispered as he staggered inside. "Nearly was," Sam admitted through chattering teeth. She helped him remove his frozen clothes, her movements efficient but gentle. As feeling painfully returned to his extremities, Sam became acutely aware of her nearness, of the scent of her hair as she leaned close to wrap a blanket around his shoulders. Their eyes met briefly, and something electric passed between them before Beatrice stepped away, busying herself with making coffee. That night, with the blizzard still raging, Sam insisted Beatrice and Emma take the bed while he made a pallet near the fire. He lay awake long after the cabin went dark, listening to their soft breathing, wondering at the strange contentment that had stolen over him despite the dangerous storm. February brought calmer weather and a letter delivered by a passing mail carrier. Sam watched Beatrice's face pale as she read it, her hands trembling slightly. "Bad news?" he asked when she finally set the paper down. "Richard, my husband's brother," she explained. "He sold his property in Laramie and moved to California." Her voice wavered. "He says there's no place for us." Sam felt a confusing mixture of sympathy and relief. "I'm sorry," he offered inadequately. "What am I to do now?" Beatrice whispered, more to herself than to him. "I have no family, no money." "You can stay," Sam said before he could reconsider. "Here, I mean, until you figure things out." Beatrice's eyes, bright with unshed tears, met his. "You've already done so much." "It's nothing," Sam insisted, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "The cabin feels empty when—" He stopped, realizing he'd said too much, but something had shifted between them. In the weeks that followed, Sam found Beatrice watching him with an expression he couldn't decipher. Their evening conversations grew longer, their silences more comfortable. When their fingers accidentally brushed as they both reached for the coffee pot, neither pulled away immediately. March arrived with the first hints of spring, patches of bare ground appearing beneath the snow, the return of birdsong at dawn. Emma, now 8 months old, was attempting to crawl, bringing both joy and chaos to the small cabin. Sam found himself on the floor with her in the evenings, delighting in her determined efforts and infectious giggles. "She adores you," Beatrice observed one night as Sam helped Emma stand, her tiny hands gripping his fingers. "She's an easy child to care for," Sam replied, though the words felt inadequate to describe the attachment he'd formed to the infant. "Sam," Beatrice said hesitantly, "I've been thinking. With spring coming, I should make plans." A cold weight settled in Sam's stomach. "Of course." There's a teaching position open in Medicine Bow. The storekeeper mentioned it when I went with you last week. She twisted her hands in her lap. I wrote to inquire, they responded today. Sam nodded, his face carefully blank. Teaching would suit you. Yes, but Beatrice took a deep breath. It would mean leaving soon. The prospect of returning to his solitary existence, which once would have brought relief, now left Sam feeling hollow. The cabin without Beatrice's quiet presence, without Emma's determined crawling, it would be unbearable. I see, he said stiffly. Well, when spring comes proper, I'll take you to the stage station. That night in the barn, Sam confronted the truth he'd been avoiding for months. Somewhere between finding Beatrice at the creek and watching Emma take her first tentative movements, he'd lost his conviction that isolation was safety. These two had breached his defenses, bringing warmth and purpose to his life. The thought of losing them felt like losing a limb. But what right did he have to ask them to stay? Beatrice deserved security, opportunity, not a hardscrabble existence with a man who could barely express his own feelings. And Emma deserved more than he could provide as a surrogate father. The following days passed with a tension Sam couldn't dispel. He threw himself into spring preparations, mending fences, checking the herd for new calves, planting the small garden plot. Beatrice continued her domestic routine, but their easy companionship had given way to awkward politeness. Late one afternoon, Sam returned from checking fence lines to find Beatrice sitting on the porch step, her face troubled. Emma napped inside, giving them a rare moment of privacy. What's wrong? Sam asked, removing his hat. Beatrice twisted her hands in her lap. A writer came by today, Jason Miller from the Double Circle. Sam stiffened. The Double Circle was owned by Frederick Coates, the wealthiest rancher in the territory, and a man known for expanding his holdings by whatever means necessary. What did he want? He said Mr. Coates is claiming this land. That your filing wasn't properly recorded. Beatrice's voice trembled slightly. He said we have 2 weeks to vacate before they come and remove us. Anger flared in Sam's chest. My paperwork is sound. I filed it myself in Cheyenne. He showed me documents, they looked official. Beatrice stood, brushing dust from her skirt. Perhaps there was a mistake. Or Coates forged new papers, Sam said grimly. He's done it before. What will you do? The question hung between them, weighted with implications. Sam could fight, but Frederick Coates employed a dozen men, some little better than hired guns. Or he could leave, find unclaimed land further west, start over. I need to ride to Cheyenne, Sam decided. Check the records myself. Will you be all right here alone for a few days? Worry creased Beatrice's brow, but she nodded. We'll be fine, but Sam, please be careful. Mr. Miller mentioned that Mr. Coates doesn't like opposition. Sam's journey to Cheyenne confirmed his worst fears. His land claim had indeed been properly filed, but someone had since added a document transferring ownership to the Double Circle Ranch. The clerk, a nervous young man with ink-stained fingers, admitted that Mr. Coates had friends in the land office. There's nothing to be done legally, he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. Not unless you have more influence than Coates. Sam returned home 3 days later, rage and helplessness warring within him. The sight of smoke rising from his chimney, of Beatrice hanging laundry with Emma secured in a sling across her chest, only sharpened his determination. This was his home, their home, and he wouldn't surrender it without a fight. It's as I feared, he told Beatrice that evening. Coates has falsified documents, the law won't help us. Beatrice sat very still, her face pale in the firelight. Then we must leave, find somewhere safe. This is my land, Sam insisted. My father taught me that a man defends what's his. And my father taught me that a coffin makes poor shelter, Beatrice replied sharply. Coates has men, guns. You are one man. I could ask neighbors for help. The same neighbors who fear Coates. Who would risk their own families. Beatrice rose suddenly, moving to where Emma slept peacefully. I've already lost one man to frontier pride. I won't watch another die. The words hung between them, their implication clear. Beatrice cared for him, perhaps as more than the stranger who'd offered shelter. The realization both warmed and terrified Sam. I can't just surrender, he said, more gently now. Not without trying. Beatrice turned, tears glimmering in her eyes. Then promise me you'll be smart about it. promise me Emma won't lose another father." Another father, the phrase struck Sam like a physical blow. Is that what he'd become to Emma? Is that what he wanted to be? "I promise," he said hoarsely. The next morning, Sam rode to neighboring homesteads seeking allies. Most expressed sympathy but offered only vague promises of support. Coates' reputation for retribution was well known. By sunset, Sam had secured commitments from only 3 men, hardly enough to stand against Coates' crew. As he approached his cabin, exhausted and disheartened, he spotted unfamiliar horses tied outside. Drawing his pistol, he approached cautiously until he recognized Jason Miller's dun gelding. Anger surged through him as he pushed open the door. Miller sat at Sam's table, hat in hand, while 2 other men stood near the fireplace. Beatrice stood rigidly by the stove, Emma clutched protectively to her chest. "Everett," Miller nodded as if they were meeting for a social call. "I was just explaining to your woman here that Mr. Coates is a reasonable man." "Get out," Sam growled, his pistol still drawn. Miller raised his hands placatingly. Now, I'm here with an offer. Mr. Coates will pay you fair market value for this place." "More than it's worth, truth be told." "It's not for sale." "Don't be foolish," Miller's voice hardened. "You know what happens to stubborn men in this territory." Sam took a step forward, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Is that a threat?" One of the other men, a narrow-faced individual with cold eyes, stepped forward. "It's a fact. Accidents happen out here. Cabins burn, people disappear." "Sam," Beatrice's voice was tight with fear. "Please." The tension in the room was palpable. Sam knew he could likely take down 1 man, maybe 2 if he was lucky, but not all 3, and not without risking Beatrice and Emma in the crossfire. "You have until Sunday," Miller said, rising. "Take the money or face the consequences." He gestured to his men who filed out ahead of him. At the door he paused. "Pretty woman you've got, Everett. Shame if something happened to her or that baby." It took every ounce of Sam's self-control not to shoot Miller where he stood. Only Beatrice's presence and Emma's soft whimpering held him back. When they were gone, Beatrice collapsed into a chair, trembling visibly. "They came just after noon, said they wanted to talk reasonably." Her voice broke. The one with the scar, he kept looking at Emma. "Said what a shame it would be if she grew up without a mother." Sam crossed to her, kneeling beside her chair. "Did they hurt you?" "No," Beatrice shook her head. "But Sam, they will, you know they will." Sam took her hand, his resolve hardening. "Pack what you can carry, we're leaving tonight." Under cover of darkness, they loaded essentials onto Sam's 2 horses. Food, clothing, the small trunk containing Beatrice's few treasured possessions. Sam left the cattle and most of his furnishings, taking only what they needed for immediate survival and what they couldn't bear to lose. "Where will we go?" Beatrice asked as she secured Emma in a sling across her chest. "North," Sam decided, "into Montana Territory. I heard there's still good land available there." They rode through the night, Sam constantly checking their back trail for pursuit. By dawn, they had covered nearly 20 miles, the familiar landscape giving way to unfamiliar territory. They made camp in a sheltered draw, both too exhausted for conversation. As Sam gathered wood for a small fire, he wrestled with bitter regret. Everything he'd built over the past years gone. The security he'd worked so hard to establish vanished. He'd failed at the most basic frontier task, holding his ground. Yet as he watched Beatrice tend to Emma, singing softly as she nursed her beneath a blanket, Sam felt a different emotion stirring. These 2 lives were in his hands now. Their safety, their future depended on his decisions. It was a responsibility he'd never sought, but one he found himself embracing with surprising determination. They continued northward for 3 days, avoiding main trails and settlements, sleeping rough beneath spring stars. On the 4th day, they encountered a small wagon train headed for the Montana gold fields, 3 families and a couple of single men seeking fortune. "You're welcome to travel with us," offered the train's leader, a grizzled farmer named Hank Wheeler. "Safety in numbers out here." Sam hesitated, wary of entanglements with strangers, but Beatrice, seeing his reluctance, stepped forward. "We'd be grateful," she said. "I can help with cooking and mending." That night, camped among the circled wagons, Sam watched as Beatrice moved easily among the travelers, Emma balanced on her hip. The other women cooed over the baby while their children played nearby. It was a scene of community, something Sam had deliberately avoided for years. Your wife's a fine woman, Wheeler commented, sitting beside Sam at the fire. Takes a special kind to manage a baby on a journey like this. Sam didn't correct the assumption. She's stronger than she looks. And the little one you're first. Sam hesitated, then nodded. The lie felt strangely right, as if by claiming Emma he was acknowledging the bond that had formed over the months. Nothing makes a man reassess his priorities like a child, Wheeler observed, tamping tobacco into his pipe. Suddenly it's not just about surviving, it's about building something that lasts. The words resonated with Sam in a way he hadn't expected. His obsession with self-reliance, with needing no one, it seemed hollow now. Empty. Later, as Beatrice settled Emma for sleep in the small tent they'd been loaned, Sam found himself studying her face in the lantern light. The past months had changed her. Hardship had carved away some of her softness, replacing it with quiet strength. Yet there remained a gentleness to her that called to something long dormant in Sam's soul. "What is it?" Beatrice asked, noticing his gaze. "Wheeler thinks you're my wife," Sam said, "and Emma my daughter." Beatrice's cheeks colored slightly. "I'm sorry, I should have corrected him." "No," Sam said quickly, "it's simpler this way." "Safe or even." A silence fell between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. "Sam," Beatrice began hesitantly, "when we reach Montana, what then?" It was the question he'd been avoiding. Would they part ways? Would she continue to medicine Bo as planned? The thought made his chest constrict painfully. "I don't know," he admitted. "I suppose that depends on what you want." Beatrice's gaze dropped to Emma, now sleeping peacefully. "I want safety for her, a home," her voice softened, "and I've grown accustomed to your company." Accustomed, the word seemed inadequate for the bond that had formed between them. Sam gathered his courage, reaching across to take her hand. "Beatrice, I'm not good with words, never have been, but these past months," he faltered, then pushed on. "I never thought I'd want a family, thought it was a weakness out here, but you and Emma. You make me want things I didn't know I was missing." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes. "Sam." A shout from outside the tent interrupted whatever she might have said. "Riders coming." "Everyone up." Sam grabbed his rifle, rushing outside to find the camp in sudden commotion. Through the gathering dusk, a group of horsemen approached, at least 8 of them, moving fast. "Get down," Sam shouted as the first shots rang out, sending dirt spraying near the wagons. Women screamed, children cried, and men scrambled for weapons. Sam took cover behind a wagon wheel, scanning the attackers desperately. There the narrow-faced man from his cabin, and beside him Jason Miller. Coates' men had found them. The battle was brief but vicious. The wagon-trained defenders, though surprised, fought back fiercely. 2 attackers fell quickly, but a third bullet found Wheeler's shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Sam fired methodically, each shot deliberate. He saw Miller go down, clutching his leg. The remaining attackers, realizing their advantage lost, retreated into the darkness, firing wildly as they fled. When silence finally fell, Sam rushed back to the tent, heart hammering. "Beatrice." She was there, huddled in the corner, Emma clutched tightly to her chest. Both were unharmed, though Beatrice's face was deathly pale. "They found us," she whispered. "They'll keep coming." Sam knelt beside her, taking her free hand. "They won't, not after this. Miller's wounded, maybe dead. The others won't risk their lives for Coates' land grab." But even as he spoke the reassurance, Sam knew the threat remained as long as Coates held a grudge. Only distance, significant distance, would ensure their safety. The wagon train resumed its journey the next day, now with wounded to tend and a heightened vigilance. Sam rode scout, constantly watching their back trail for signs of pursuit. None came, but the knowledge that they had been tracked so far from home left everyone uneasy. "Montana might not be far enough," Sam admitted to Beatrice one evening as they made camp near the Yellowstone River. "Coates has a long reach." Beatrice looked up from where she was changing Emma's diaper. "Then where?" "Canada maybe," Sam suggested, "or California." "California," Beatrice repeated softly. "Thomas and I once dreamed of going there." An uncomfortable twinge passed through Sam at the mention of her husband. "Would you want that, to go to California?" "I want peace," she said simply. "Somewhere Emma can grow up without fear, somewhere we can." She hesitated, then met his eyes directly. "Somewhere we can be a family, if that's truly what you want." The directness of her statement took Sam's breath away. "Beatrice, I'm not Thomas. I can't replace him." "I'm not asking you to," she replied, her gaze steady. "Thomas is part of my past, part of Emma's beginning, but you," she took a deep breath, "you could be our future if you choose." Sam looked down at Emma, who gazed back with innocent trust. Then at Beatrice, whose quiet strength had sustained them both through danger and loss. The walls he'd built around his heart over years of solitude crumbled completely. "I want that," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "To be your future, to be Emma's father in truth, not just pretense." "Then ask me properly," Beatrice whispered, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Sam took her hand, suddenly aware of how unprepared he was for this moment. He had no ring, no practiced words, only the truth in his heart. "Beatrice Porter, will you marry me? Let me be a husband to you and a father to Emma. I can't promise wealth or ease, but I swear I'll protect you both with my life and love you with all that I am." "Yes," she said simply, and the single word contained worlds of promise. They were married 2 days later by a circuit preacher who had joined the wagon train. The ceremony was simple, Beatrice in her cleanest dress with wildflowers in her hair, Sam in his one good shirt, Emma gurgling happily in Wheeler's wife's arms. Their witnesses were strangers who had become friends through shared danger, their chapel the vast Montana sky. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." When Sam kissed Beatrice for the first time as her husband, he felt something settle within him, a sense of rightness, of coming home despite having no physical home to claim. That night after Emma was asleep, husband and wife came together with tenderness and discovered in each other's arms the healing both had needed. As Beatrice slept beside him afterward, Sam watched the moonlight play across her features and marveled at the journey that had brought them here, from broken wagon to broken dreams to something new and whole. The wagon train reached Virginia City, Montana, 3 weeks later. The gold rush had transformed the former mining camp into a bustling town of wooden storefronts and crowded streets. Some of their traveling companions continued onward, but Sam and Beatrice decided to remain, at least temporarily. Sam found work as a blacksmith's assistant, his strength and willingness to learn earning him steady wages. Beatrice took in mending and eventually secured a position teaching the children of miners and merchants. They rented a small cabin on the town's edge, filling it with second-hand furniture and the sound of Emma's increasingly mobile adventures. "It's not what I imagined," Beatrice admitted one evening as they sat on their tiny porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Emma played at their feet with the wooden horse Sam had given her for Christmas, now her favorite possession. "No?" Sam asked, a flicker of worry crossing his features. Beatrice smiled, reaching for his hand. "It's better. This life we're building, it feels right." Sam squeezed her fingers gently. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for that broken wheel that stranded you by Sweetwater Creek." "And I'm grateful you were the one who found us," Beatrice replied. As darkness settled over Virginia City, Sam Everett looked at his wife and daughter and recognized the truth that had eluded him for so long. The frontier wasn't just a place of isolation and survival. It was also a place where broken people could find each other and create something stronger together than they ever could alone. The man who had once believed that attachments only led to pain now understood that love, while it made you vulnerable, also made you invincible in the ways that truly mattered. In choosing to rescue an abandoned young mother and create a family, Sam had rescued himself from a lifetime of lonely survival. When Emma looked up at him and smiled, reaching with chubby hands to be lifted into his arms, Sam knew with absolute certainty that he had found his true home, not in any patch of land or cabin walls, but in the hearts of the wife and daughter who had claimed him as their own.